Hello. I'm Duncan Chappell. Welcome everybody to our webinar. I'm going to give a few minutes for people to come in and join us. While I am doing that, I'm going to explain how a Zoom webinar works in case any of you have not been to a Zoom webinar before. I'm going to introduce our speakers, and then we are going to get to the meat of the conversation. So some things to talk about how the webinar works. At the bottom of the screen, you can see some options for chat and options for Q&A. So the way that we've said it is that the chat is going only to the panelists. So if you type something into the chat, we will be able to see it. That is a good place to type things like, "We can't hear you." Or I don't know, something like that. Some housekeeping type event would go very well into the bottom of the chat. On the other hand, we have our Q&A panel. So this is where we would invite you to type in questions, and ideally we will contribute answers directly into the webinar orally. But if Ashwin or Rob are on it, they could even type directly in an answer if there are questions that they want to answer directly. The format is going to be a conversation really between us. So no slides today. We're recording it, which means that we will share this recording with you and with people who couldn't make the webinar. It also means if you pose a question, we're going to do our best to remember to not use your name, because you might not want to be, I don't know, called out or doxed for a question. So we're going to take the questions and answer them, in a kind of, in a way that strips them from your context. Just to quickly introduce our speakers, I'm especially grateful to have Rob Petrucelli here. Rob is somebody who's been leading analyst relations for service providers, worked at an analyst firm, has worked so widely across a very wide range of tech services and conversational AI markets, is one of the few people to have attained the heady heights of a VP job title in the AR world. And I'm also delighted to be joined by my CC Group colleague, Ashwin Venturakari. He's our consulting analyst, so our kind of, we're leveraging his experience as having been a research director at IDC and at FutureSource. He's somebody who's an expert, particularly in supply chains and in consumer tech markets, especially in the emerging markets. So we have some very different perspectives. Rob is in North America. I am here in Europe. Ashwin's expertise is very much in the Middle East and in the Asia Pacific markets. So we're bringing something together here that will be quite a free-ranging conversation. We've been speaking a lot between the three of us, so there's just an awful lot on our minds, a lot on our chests that we want to get off. And I want to try to set a bit of a framework for the conversation just by setting the scene a little bit to what we mean by turmoil, and very much what we mean by turmoil is opportunity. Yeah. So it's very easy for us to look at what is going on in the market and be pessimistic, but actually, as you'll hear in this conversation, I mean, there's a lot of discontinuity that produces opportunity. We've got a series of black swan events unfolding in these markets, like the black swan events that we've had in the past, where analysts have thrived. Yeah, analysts thrive in moments where there is uncertainty, because where there's uncertainty, people pick up the phone and they want to speak to analysts, and that validates and deepens the power of analyst firms and deepens the potential impact that analyst relations can mean. And also, when we're talking about turmoil, we're not really talking about one specific pain point. What we've seen over the last few years is the pandemic, rapid change in the global economy. I blinked last month and the US job market added 500,000 jobs. Technology stock market is up and down like a yo-yo. Consumer confidence is shifting. But all of this means that for analysts and for AR, it's an opportunity, a massive opportunity to play a stronger, more helpful role in the market. Rob, I'm gonna throw the biggest and most abstract question I can think of at you. So we're seeing these changes in the market. How can analyst relations and how can analyst firms really help leads to move in this market?
Thank you, Duncan. Yeah, and hello, everyone. It's great to be here. I think when we talk about turmoil and some of these past black swan events, such as the rise of the internet, the global financial crisis, the COVID-19 outbreak we all lived through, and can't believe it's a 3-year journey now. What we find is that I think the analysts and the analyst firms are thriving in these times because, as Duncan said, clients are looking for some guidance. And at the end of the day, as you all know, the analysts are talking to customers, vendors, competitors, the market on a daily basis. So when we talk about things around accelerating the business impact of analyst relations, I think it's a real opportunity for AR professionals to really be bold in this point in time. Analysts are looking to understand how companies are reacting to this turmoil. And the more bold and I would say proactive we can be, and the more ability to open up the channels to discuss these things with the analysts and how your organization is reacting, is always going to be an element to build trust with the analysts. And at the end of the day, when you build trust with the analysts, I believe that does impact the business. So to answer your question, Duncan, in my experience with how AR can actually help build the pipeline and potentially leads is really an opportunity for you to look at AR as a place to invest. And that allows the organization to build the relationship a little bit stronger than perhaps ever before. And that indeed can impact leads through various channels, such as joint thought leadership, webinars, bringing in analysts early into a product or service launch as well.
So Ashwin, when I hear Rob paint that theory of that picture of what AR can be doing, as a former analyst, do you see AR as a partner that is credible, that is perceived as being a player that can do that in every organization? Does AR need to step up in some organizations to change its perception to play that role?
I do. And first of all, thanks for having me here, Duncan. And hi, everybody. Some people I know, some people I don't. But to answer to your point, I think it's very important that AR changes its perception, right? It's not only a cost center, it's also a kind of beacon for the organization to show where the opportunities lie for them. The pandemic has shown us one thing, that the world is shrinking as a market for all the tech companies, right? So now with the turmoil or the challenges that is being faced in North America and Western Europe, there are immense opportunity in APAC and Middle East and Africa, for example, where the impact of inflation and cost of living crisis is minimally felt. So how does AR bring these opportunities to the business leaders? Engaging with the right analysts and talking to them where the business opportunities are, showcasing those business opportunities is going to be the way forward, in my opinion.
That makes sense. I know one of the things that we were kicking around. In fact, I've been kicking around with other people as well. Have been like wider conversations about turmoil. So, for example, there was a Gartner webinar around turmoil where they had a speaker from Amazon Web Services, and I think this is interesting just to think about the way that the analyst firms might invite AR to respond to turmoil is maybe not exactly the same response that we might that we might recommend to AR. One of the things that came out also in the Analyst Relations Forum boardroom event in November in San Francisco is I think we see a lot of analyst relations teams are seeing this new market opportunity, are seeing market forces pushing at AR to drive more value internally, to understand what AR can do to help the business better. And Gartner's answer, unsurprisingly, is that AR should consume more Gartner. So if AR wants to play its maximum role in the business, that means helping the business to make right choices, and making smart choices means spending more money with Gartner and consuming more Gartner content. And no one can be against consuming more Gartner content. That's fine. But I think AR teams have to respond in different ways that mean asking, what can we do that is most useful for our colleagues in the business? And that means that some AR teams are broadening out their reach. They're looking at opinion leaders, sourcing advisors, management consultants, or whatever. Some teams are aligning to more specific business value engines. So they're supporting the sales team with sales enablement. They're trying to drive more foresight into the organization to help executives work at a strategic level. They're really focusing on giving insights into product teams and solution managers. At many firms, certainly sent it to me, like AWS are doing this. They're really organizing their plans and evaluating the results continually. And I think because AR teams are responding to turmoil in different ways, it might seem a little bit chaotic, as if AR doesn't know how to respond. But actually what these AR teams are doing, I think, is right, that they are trying to see what can they do to deliver value to their business. And different businesses, stakeholders in their businesses, they've got different needs right now. And I think that whole approach of focusing on what you need is really important. And then also making sure that people don't get scared about turmoil. In the tech industry, it's always spoken about FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That's something that is real. It's not invented by the analyst. It's not invented by the vendors. It's the world. It's what's happening in the world, and it creates demand for analysts. And I think in a certain sense, even AR people can benefit from saying, AR's brand is crisis. If AR can talk about the way that the changes in the market produce an impetus for change in our client organizations, in enterprises, in telecommunications buyers, then I think that's going to help us. Ashwin, I wonder if I can turn to you just on some more specific opportunities, right? What do you, I've spoken very broadly here about looking to what's valuable for your organization. How might that kind of metabolize in some organizational setting?
I mean, interestingly, you mentioned FUD, right? Because I know from experience that in times of uncertainty, analyst firms' business shoots up, because the clients expect the analyst firm to show them the light in a dark tunnel, right? So as to speak. But what the responsibility of the analyst firm lies in the fact that to understand the core business of their clients and push them where they can materialize that core business. If it's not available in America, where else is the opportunities available, right? I'll give you a case in point. We just saw in a news report about a week, 10 days back, that Oracle is investing about $3 billion in data centers in Saudi Arabia. Well, now you tell me that if there is a turmoil, this shouldn't happen under normal circumstances. But yet you see Microsoft following Oracle's footsteps and also investing in Saudi Arabia. Opportunities exist. The responsibility of AR primarily is to find out where the opportunities exist and bring the analyst firms and the business leaders together on the table so that discussions are made on the right track, not forward-looking statements, not what's going to happen 5 years from now, but what's happening now, where the opportunities exist now, and how they can grab those opportunities.
And Rob, just on that, I mean, I think those examples of Microsoft and Oracle are interesting, aren't they? Because on the one hand, like, these are like quite confident choices, aren't they? Making big investments in market growth. But on the other hand, I mean, they're not exactly defensive, but they are investing in the core competencies and the core markets of the vendors, rather than, you know, growing marginal business, growing future growth platforms. So I think there are multiple dynamics unfolding there, aren't there? How do you think the vendors, service providers are going to respond to this situation?
Well, I'm glad you talked about FUD, because that brings me back to, my goodness, when I was at Gartner, when I worked there myself, and FUD was something that was really driving their growth, right? I mean, you had fear, uncertainty, and doubt in all the clients' minds. And just as Ashwin said, they were turning to, at the time, Gartner, to really understand, how do I manage this? And what are my competitors doing? What's the best practices in my industry? I mean, you have that today with something like ChatGPT, right? Like, everyone wants to understand, what does ChatGPT mean for my business? How is conversational AI going to impact? And it might be a business that is even unrelated, but, you know, it happens with all emerging technologies, and that creates demand for the analysts. On the services side, I think it's very similar. Emerging tech, disruption, turmoil actually helps drive the service providers' businesses as well, because in most cases, they see a need to invest. So where a company might not even be looking at conversational AI last year, they're the savvy companies will be investing to understand, how will this impact my business, and what do I need to do to take advantage of it? It's very interesting in the sense of how the leading service providers react to that, because I think the very savvy ones and the leaders are investing even more in the analysts and analyst relations as a result, to have more strategic relationships and deeper relationships with the analysts, bringing the analysts in at a much earlier stage in the solution and product development, which of course is a best practice. But I think in times of turmoil, you see it as an opportunity for service providers to actually leapfrog the competition, or potentially differentiate from the competition. So in some cases, interesting, I was talking to someone who hired me many, many moons ago, and is now on the board of some of the leading tech companies in Silicon Valley and beyond. And one of the things that came up in the board meeting was the importance of the industry analysts. And in that particular case, that company in the board meeting was talking about the need to invest even further into the AR program, mainly because they saw the value, and they saw that this could be an opportunity for this high growth company to differentiate even further from some of the key competitors in the market. So I hope that helps. I think that's a very good point, and we can of course continue that discussion, because as we say, and the theme of this really is, you see it as an opportunity for all of us here on the call.
And it is interesting, isn't it, to see firms like looking at investments right now. I think in some parts of the, world, we're experiencing this recession. Well, we're experiencing things so differently, right? Like in the British economy came very close to recession, didn't go into recession, but definitely things feel, very, very different here. In other parts of the world, huge opportunities. I think one of the things that we've seen is, for example, I'm seeing many European service providers looking at growth opportunity in the US market. Obviously, Indian providers also seeing growth in the US market. So it's a time when people are kind of rethinking their opportunities. I'm also seeing interest rates having quite a big impact on purchasing. And I think the example that you've given about boards discussing what the way forward is shows how people are looking for the opportunities to bring competitive advantage out of what is happening, and that's happening at the leadership level. I'm not sure if AR is doing everything it can do to help organizations realize those opportunities. Ashwin, what would you say AR could be doing to make the most of these opportunities?
Quite simply, they need to find the right analysts who they can engage with, because quite often you will find them engaging with analysts who are either based in North America or in Europe, but they are discussing about APAC and Middle East and Africa, which doesn't make any sense, right? So a case in point is Apple, right? They have announced that for within the next 1 year, they are going to move about 25% of their iPhone production to India. They're kind of balancing their basket, so as to speak. They've burnt their fingers with China due to the pandemic, and they don't want to be in the same situation again. This will be followed by other hardware vendors as well. As India ramps up its manufacturing sector, this is bound to happen. But how do the tech companies engage with the right analysts who would be researching the India market? A guy in US cannot be researching the India market. So they need to find out who's the right guy within the analyst firms. And that's a labyrinth in itself. Trust me, I've been in that boat many moons back. So to find out an analyst responsible for a particular geography in itself is a challenge, given that once you find that out and we kind of engage with that analyst, that is going to be the crucial going forward for the companies. How the only way they can make use of the analyst firms is by finding out the right analyst who can help them with a particular geography.
And Rob, I mean, just to think about this from the perspective of an AR leader, I mean, one of the kind of mantras for analyst relations professionals has been to make bigger, fewer bets. We want to build deeper relationships, trusted relationships, and I think there's a tension sometimes in analyst relations that, on the one hand, we want to identify all of the analysts who are picking up the phone if a prospective customer has got a question about a particular area where our firm has got a solution, and that could be a very wide range of people sometimes. On the other hand, we want to have as many interactions with as few people as possible, because then we can make a deeper impact on people, can't we? So Ashwin's scenario there is a classic one. That, for example, there may be no analyst in the Middle East who are proactively writing about this company or that company. They might be focused on quite generic user problems inside that region, but not really specialized in focusing on a handful of vendors. But then the vendor doesn't have a trusted relationship with that analyst at the moment when they need it. When they need to pivot into a high growth opportunity or into a high growth market, or extend into maybe they've got a product and they need to wrap a service offer around it. So what can AR be doing to build like more trusted relationships? And actually, AR probably needs to build more trusted relationships both inside our own organizations and with the analysts. That's 17 questions. I'm sorry, that's very unreasonable of me.
No, well, it's a good one because, I mean, in my experience, it really does come down to building that strong relationship that's really a two-way dialogue with the most strategic analyst that you can find. Someone who understands your business, but also understands what you're trying to do in the market. So that takes trust, right? And building trust with that analyst takes a long time and can be in and of itself a challenge. But the really successful relationships are those that where we bring the analysts in, they have a relationship with the C-suite and with the execs that actually see the value of where they could potentially help them see around the corners, right? Leverage the relationship to help them accelerate the business opportunities, and also bring in, and this is where AR can really make an impact, through those relationships, be able to bring in one of these analysts that you've built trust with early in on a project or a major business opportunity. So that's one key element. It not only builds trust with the analyst, but of course, as you know, it gives the analyst a vested interest, because now you have brought them in, you've taken their counsel, you are learning from them. So for me, it's really about the insights that you can gain from the analysts, and then building enough internal relationships so that the senior leaders understand that that insight is really invaluable, right, from the analysts. And once that happens, I think what you see is this perception of both AR, but also of the value of the analyst community and other influencers as well, really increases dramatically. So as soon as you're seeing the leadership team and others seeing that value directly, obviously that's really invaluable. So that also helps to sort of change the business perception, right, in the analyst's minds of you and your organization, and of the AR function in and of itself. So I think once again, I think that's one way, and I think it's also a good example of where once those strong relationships have been met, right, and cultivated and maintained, then it's much easier to have that impact very quickly realized.
There are a couple of interesting questions that have come in, and so I might I'm probably going to take them separately, and then Ashwin, I'll probably put the question first to you, because also you may have some thoughts on what Rob has just said, and then hand it back to Rob, because there's a question that says, if fear causes companies to conserve cash, for example, to cut budgets because of uncertainty, how can we do more to untangle uncertainty with less? And Rob, I feel like there's something that you said about, well, know what markets you're focusing on. I think there's a seed of an answer there, isn't it? Which is like, put everything to one side and focus on the markets that you're focusing on. But is there more that we can do to try to make to move forward if the business is constraining the spend on AR or on marketing more broadly?
I think part of it, in my experience, has been the ability to say no to some of the elements of AR that perhaps are not considered a priority or strategic to the business, or perhaps to the program. And that's sometimes hard to do, right? So I know one of the first things I was asked to do was, when I joined, one of my roles was to say, what, I think we need to really focus and start to say no more when we're starting to see that there's too many requests being made of AR, whether it be responding to an analyst report or ranking, or just trying to focus more on what is going to be the priority for the business at that point in time. And so that's one element, right? I mean, really focusing and understanding where AR can bring that value is really important. Yeah, I think the ability to be selective, and perhaps that allows you to perhaps change the investment mix as well of where you're spending with analysts, right? You might want to say, you know what, we're now focusing on a different market or a different service area or technology. And this firm is more important perhaps than one of the others. So that's another element to think about, prioritizing and obviously focusing, and the ability to say no in certain times is also really critical.
There's
Ashwin,
another, sorry,
your take
there's
on this,
another way
Ashwin,
of
please.
looking at this, right? If you consider a client's business and you think about that perspective, obviously during times of uncertainty, the budgets will be cut. Why the budgets are being cut? Simply because the revenue is not coming through, right? So the companies will start thinking, in these times of uncertainty, I am good at these core activities. Let me focus on these core activities. If I can do it in my traditional markets, I'm happy. If not, I look at diversification. These are strategic decisions which the companies will agree eventually to invest. But where that guidance comes through, not from AR, not from the business leaders, the guidance would come from the analyst firms. So it's imperative that the analyst firms, given their subject knowledge expertise, subject matter expertise, they are already well regarded, that they understand these technologies. That is not good enough, I'm afraid. That knowledge of the technology should be married with the knowledge of the client's business. What is the core business of the client? How I can help them make money, or where are they going wrong? The clients will not, at this point in time, with all the various complications that are happening in the market, they will not think about what is going to happen 10 years from now. They have to answer their shareholders in the next half of next year, you know. So how are the analyst firms going to help them achieve those business goals and objectives? That's going to be the key.
There's a question about analysts versus consultants and advisors in analyst firms. And actually, I think I'd like to kind of break this question into two parts, because one part of it, one question is it easy to identify the right analysts? You know, like if you read the research, does that guarantee that you are identifying the right analysts for the business to reach out to? Like, might there be relevant analysts that can't be identified from the research that's being written?
Well, I saw the questions, and you could identify the relevant analysts from the content that is being published, but there's so much content that's being published these days. It's going to be tricky for the AR guy to sift through all these content and find out the right guy. You know, somebody like IDC, for example, having worked in that organization in the past, I can tell you that I can find out who a country analyst is in IDC for which domain quite simply by going to their website. That amount of granularity is kind of missing, sadly, with the other major analyst firms. These are the simple things that could really help potential clients going forward, I believe.
And Rob, I'm thinking the number of analysts writing about a firm, not all the analysts who are advising your customers will be proactively writing about a firm sometimes. Yeah. So how do you, and yet very often we do only focus on the analysts who are already writing about our firm. Partly, as Ashwin was saying, if you speak to these people, they're the ones who are the people who know your firm are the ones who are going to give you the best feedback. But then if it comes to actually shifting perception of the people who are advising buyers, maybe research is not a good guide to who you should be speaking to, an exclusive guide to who you should be speaking to.
Right. Yeah, I think it's really understanding, and it takes some time to do this, is understand really which analysts are talking to your customers, which ones are really making an impact on your clients, because that's obviously the first litmus test. The other is which ones are really the ones to target that are up and coming, perhaps, or looking at a space in a different light. So a good example is when I was working for an AI company, right? It was really more of a category creation program that I was doing, because there was very little coverage of the space at the time, and there were really no competitive assessments out there at the time. So it allowed me to build a relationship with actually 22 different analyst firms, which is probably way too many. So I said earlier to say no more, but at the time it was a point where we could say, let's broaden our horizons and see. There's some firms that I hadn't even realized existed before that were really focused on, in this case, conversational AI. Very, very important, very influential in that space. But they don't necessarily have a magic quadrant or a wave or a marketscape out there. So what it really meant was investing the time to develop those relationships based on what we saw through their influence in the market. And that could be through the press, through other social channels, and allowed us to identify some really, really influential and important analysts and advisors, by the way, that we saw our clients trusting. So really, that's what it comes down to. Of course, the most, I'd say, direct way is to understand, if an analyst is authoring a report that's going to, evaluate my company, obviously they should be on our target list. But many times it's much broader than that. I think we, as you know, and Ashwin can contest, many analysts are out there talking to your clients every day, as well as your competitors every day, that do not have any competitive assessment reports out there, or perhaps have never written a word about your organization. So the challenge there becomes, really trying to spend the time to understand which ones are really looked at as influential in that space. But then secondly, which ones are really in a position to influence my client base, right? And that is an ongoing, I'd say, opportunity, right? Because as you know, there's a lot of, we talk about turmoil, there's also turmoil in the analyst world, right? Many analysts changing roles or leaving, many are moving over to vendors, as you know. So that also creates an opportunity for AR pros to continuously really maintain and understand which ones really are my most important to focus on. And so as a result, it's really much more than just looking at the research in my experience. It really has to be allowing those analysts to understand your business and start to build those relationships with some that may not be on your initial target list.
And Ashwin, how can people identify and engage with people who might be working in advisory or consulting roles? I mean, I imagine it might be a bit different, that in some like advisory businesses, people might have very fixed beats, very fixed coverages. But in some consulting firms, I mean, it's not exactly like being a taxi driver, but a client inquiry comes in, and then, I mean, I used to work at Ovum as a consultant, and it was a little bit like that. I mean, if I had capacity and a question came in and nobody was an expert in it, then I may as well deal with it as somebody else. So how should AR be trying to engage with advisors and consultants? And if it should, how can it engage with them?
I mean, these are they should have the right questions to ask them. Normally in companies like Gartner or IDC or Forrester, the big, more established firms, a consultant will always be accompanied by the domain expert, right? He will channelize the domain expert's thought process in a way that the client can understand. That's the job of a consultant, right? So normally it should happen. If it doesn't happen, then mostly there might be a disconnect between what kind of question is being asked and how is the response coming through. That could be a communication gap there.
Yeah, in the services world, we have the benefit of having advisors that are very deeply knowledgeable about what's happening out there, what deals are happening out there in the market, what players are out there. So in my past experience, what I've understood is that we've actually started to treat the advisors and the analysts almost in a very similar way. So for example, our analyst days are not just analyst days in the past. Many of the vendors out there in the services sector will actually combine the analysts and the advisors together. Because at the end of the day, you're still trying to share your vision and strategy with the audience. It's very important that they both understand that. Now, on the Gartner side, consulting is a separate entity, as everybody knows, and it is a little bit more challenging. But what that means is that if there is an advisor relations function, and some organizations have an advisor relations function, next to or sometimes part of the analyst relations function, it's really beneficial to be very closely aligned to those functions, because essentially there's also a blurring of the lines where you have an ISG and an Avasant, which has traditionally been a third-party advisor, starting to produce a lot of research that very much mirrors what the analysts are putting out. So as a result, it makes a lot of sense to really have that synergy there and treat the advisors in a very similar way as the analysts. It's very similar in the sense of building that trust, educating them about your capabilities, as well as the market, right? They want to understand your client wins, your client opportunities, and what's driving the market. And in some cases, like in the AI space, for example, we use the advisors as an opportunity to educate them on the opportunities that AI brings, right? Which was great. So it was a very, very, I'd say, collaborative relationship. So while not all organizations have an advisor relations function, it's very good to be able to collaborate very closely with that function, because it allows you to, first of all, make sure that your message to the market is consistent, but also they're, again, talking to your potential clients and they're seeing how deals are being shaped. And as a result, they have some very good feedback and insights that the business can actually, gain a lot of knowledge from. So that's a very good opportunity. And I know many folks are very well versed in the advisor side of what they do. But I know it's very specific in many cases to certain industries. So not all AR pros need to even understand or worry about the advisors.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that advisors have a growing impact on like software and SaaS purchasing. Traditionally, they've had an impact on services firms. So like services firms, I think, are far ahead of anybody else in understanding sourcing advisors, and then many are not. Ashwin, I was struck by what Rob was saying about the importance of building trust. And as an analyst, I know that often you will have had the opposite experience of AR not working with you to build trust, but acting like a gatekeeper and trying to make your life harder. And can you give some contrasting experiences there with? Because I can imagine that because of what we've said earlier on about trying to do more, Rob was talking about learning to love no. But then, if AR people get into the habit of saying no, that's also going to mean disappointing some analysts, isn't it?
Yep. Some major companies, in my experience, I can tell you that, as much as the analysts want to build relationship with the business leaders to understand their pain points, to have a better understanding of the business. They're simply not allowed to engage with the analysts directly without an AR professional or AR team member in the conversation, who acts as a kind of gatekeeper, filters what information goes through and how the information exchange is happening. If Apple is an example, right? If I have a query for Apple business leader, I would have to send that query through my AR contact, who would then disseminate it to the right business leader, and then come back to me with a response. On the other hand, you have other companies who used to take the market share data or take the report, not share it freely internally with their team, kind of disseminate what needs to be shared or how much it needs to be shared. So this kind of gatekeeping also could be an impediment going forward when your focus is on exchange of information and understanding of business.
And Rob, I wonder if you might have some thoughts about how this turmoil actually might be affecting the way that analysts are getting insights and data from vendors. Like we had a question about this. Obviously, Ashwin has explained, I mean, we all know, right? If there's gatekeeping, then the analysts are like water in a storm, right? I mean, they're going to get in one way or the other, right? If they can't get in through the back door, they'll get in through the front door. But at the same time, I think there is this perception that the reporting burden on AR teams is increasing from vendors. Like the analysts are getting more and more of their information from vendors, and of course with reviews from vendors' customers. Yeah. So what's a better way of describing what's going on? Are analysts getting more information formally, more information informally, both? And how might that be changing in this period where questions are going to be posing different questions? Analysts, customers will be posing different questions at this time in the economy to what they could have been asking previously.
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, in my experience, I think what is really interesting is that the analysts are going to continue to be trusted and understand that they are still a very important influencer out there, in addition to other influencers, right? We talked about the advisors, we talked about other influencers a little bit, but at the end of the day, the enterprises that will still put their trust in the analysts will actually accelerate that as more uncertainty arises. So I think really what that means is, AR, the ones that are most successful are not necessarily gatekeepers, right? You want there to be a really a partnership between you and the analyst, right? So and we all know different firms are organized differently, but I think the ones where the AR professionals are really empowered to build those really strong relationships with the key analysts and be able to share those insights, as well as gather insights from analysts and share those within the organization, is really critical. And that essentially elevates the value of AR naturally, but it also allows AR to be able to actually get more insight from the analysts and bring that to the business, right? And I think in times like this, the more that AR can do that, the better, right? So if you think about some of the disruptive technologies, you think about inflation and some of the things happening in the global economy, more and more AR in the market intelligence, the insights that AR can bring and share is really critical. So it creates a much more proactive nature to what AR can do, right? There's always going to be the reactive nature of the multiple RFIs and reports and rankings that AR manages. But in these times, reaching out and understanding an analyst's opinion about what's happening in the market. And that, by the way, can change on a daily, weekly, monthly basis as well, right? So what is the current pulse of the analyst's view of the market in your industry is so critical, right? Because as we all see, it changes on a dime. So, I think one of the interesting things, I thought it was interesting, I actually put into Chat GPT turmoil and analyst relations, right? Everybody, hopefully many of you guys have played with this, and I know there's a lot of different opinions about it, but one of the elements I thought was interesting in the response was very much similar to what we're talking about here. Effective AR can be especially important during times of turmoil. This is exactly what it says. Analyst assessments can have a significant impact on the way your organization is viewed in the market, right? So again, we all know this, but it's very interesting to see, when you ask an AI like that, it just reinforces what we're talking about here today. The ability for AR to have an impact and to really be viewed as more strategic is a great opportunity.
Thank you. I've got one last question on my list. Ashwin, I'm going to put it to you, and then I'll put it back to Rob, since Rob's just been speaking. In this time of turmoil, how is AR really acting? Right? Is AR right now a catalyst for the business, or is it a brake on the business? I mean, what's your perception?
I think, first and foremost, we need to understand that AR is a cost center per se. So, but the companies should understand or appreciate the value aspect of what they bring, what the AR team is bringing onto the table. So in that aspect, I believe that if done properly, like how we've discussed the past hour or so, if done properly, they would eventually be respected and understood as a catalyst within their organization.
And Rob, for you, what's the difference between AR acting like a catalyst and AR acting like a brake right now?
Well, it's definitely a catalyst because at the end of the day, right, I think the AR professionals understand what the analysts are writing better than anybody else in the organization, usually. They also understand what it takes to influence the analyst, right? So it might be, what does it take to become a leader in their assessments? Or it might also mean, what does it take to be viewed as, perhaps a pioneer in a certain area, right? So those insights are so critical to share with the business, because in many cases, the AR team and the AR professionals understand that, and the nuances about what the analyst perceptions are better than anybody else in the organization. So it really is a catalyst. And I think at this point, with the spokespeople and your relationship with the business, leveraging those analyst relationships to help the business see around the corner and to see opportunities is a really valuable element.
That's fantastic. Well, what I want to do next is I've got to put up a little advert for our next webinar, and then I want to thank our speakers as well. So if you have your cell phone with you, boom, there's a little QR code there, hopefully, that you can use. So Ashwin, Rob, thank you so much for joining us today. I think you can tell from the questions that AR is being asked to do more with less. Yeah, so yeah. That's a challenge, and part of the reason why the business is asking AR to do more with less is because the business is scraping together pennies to help it survive. Yeah, so I think sometimes we see marketing activities being curtailed, But then what AI has to be much more attentive to is supporting the business to do what it's trying to do to move forward. Yeah, that means understanding the markets that we're moving into, supporting the initiatives, aligning much more strongly. But then it also means reflecting back to the business what the business needs to learn from analysts in order to do that more successfully. Yeah. And that is kind of the bridge to this webinar that we're doing in a few weeks. Dan Miles is a lead generation and strategic marketing expert who's recently commissioned a study of tech buyers to see when tech buyers are investing in like high-end business-to-business solution providers, what's the balance between the kind of functional versus brand-oriented characteristics of the buyer. What's interesting is that very often we think of buyers and of industry analysts as just being focused on functionality. But actually, when we look at industry analysts, for example, 25 to 50% of the information that most analysts are using is actually that more brand-oriented stuff. And yet very often we don't have a strong brand story on the tip of our spokespeople's tongues in the briefing. So that is the topic of our next thing. I'll be talking about it on social media. You can hopefully get to the registration code, the registration page with that QR code. Ashwin, Rob, thank you so much for coming here. As I mentioned, we're going to be sending out the recording to people who couldn't make the webinar. A lot of people made it. Around 3/4 of the people who were here at the start made it all the way through to the end. We lost some people on the half hour, of course. But I'm also going to send to you any questions that come in from the people who've taken who interact with the recording and then have any questions that arise from the recording. I don't know if there are any final words that you have. You can have like 2 minutes each in the 1.5 minutes each in the remaining minutes.
Not sorry.
No, I just wanted to thank you. It's been really helpful and great discussion. When you think about the many factors that drive market change and disruption and turmoil, right? It really is an opportunity. I always like to use the quote from JFK. He said, "Change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or present are certain to miss the future." Great quote, and I think it's very relevant to today's discussion. So thanks so much, and look forward to continuing the dialogue with many of you.
Thanks, Duncan. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. I hope it was useful for the participants. I enjoyed talking to you, both Rob and Duncan. Thanks for your time, Rob. I think it's an eye-opener for me personally. I've learned a lot of things about what's happening in the industry, but I think this is an opportunity, definite opportunity for companies, AR and analysts alike, to change the way they do things, because things are not going to be the same. So they need to change accordingly.
So true. Well, thank you so much to everybody, and we'll send out an email when we have the recording together. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.